welcome back. Chop Up episode 70. This is a lot of times I say this is a special one, but this is another special one where we're streaming live halfway or all the way across the world. It's a different day because we have Kristy from Piny Pony here all the way from New Zealand.
Hey guys, I'm excited to be here. Yeah, it's Thursday here and I'm pretty sure it's Wednesday for you guys. So I'm technically living in the future. You guys are behind. Sorry.
You are. That's cool. It's good to know that Thursday is coming though.
Being here in New Zealand, everyone thinks we're in the US, which I like. I'm okay with that. But then I talk and they're like, Australia. Right. I'm like, close. Not close enough.
Cool. Well, let's jump into it. Thank you for taking some time out of your day, Kristy, to jump on with us.
No worries at all, guys. I'm really excited.
Well, we've been following you over the last 3-4 years. Big fans. I love just everything you're doing, from the studio to the speaking to the social media, and kind of how you handle it all. It's very cohesive. It's all done really well. I think what ties it all together is the fact that you're kind of true to who you are. I feel like that's kind of what we get in a lot of times, is we just kind of do what we want to do as far as like design, branding, getting in front of the camera if we want to get in front of the camera. If we don't feel like we have to. So I feel like you're kind of running that same direction and things, and we've been watching you forever, and props to you for all that.
Hey, thanks Dan. Honestly, it's interesting because when I spoke at Adobe Max recently, I brought you guys up in my speech for this reason. And it was the fact that you guys have stayed so true to yourselves and who you are. And I love that. Although we're like vastly different in terms of the aesthetics and everything, but like it's the same concept. I try not to be influenced by other things around me. Even when I started the company, I had a couple of other names and I was like, I could go with those, but they just feel so safe and kind of boring, like Kristy Campbell Design. And I was like, no hate to anyone who goes out there and uses their own name for their business name. But I just knew, I was like, I want to be so different and do something that is truly memorable to me, which is why Piny Pony works so well. I mean, I get asked all the time, people are like, where did it come from? Where was the name? And it was just because I love pink and I love ponies, which saying it out loud is kind of ridiculous, but it's worked so well. And I'm so, so glad that I stuck with that name, because people totally just laughed in my face. I had a few people be like, oh, I don't think that's going to work. But here we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to scare them a little bit. So it's like, that's the kind of thing that makes people be interested. It's like, you got to be on that edge of like, I don't know, maybe not. So yeah, it's clearly worked. And, you've made a lane for yourself, and, with the actual design, with the social and all the components Dan said. If anything, it seems like you're busy as heck. You're up early. I mean, you show sometimes it's like 5 a.m. or something, and you're in the office, and, that's early. You're putting some hours in.
I'm putting the hours in. And I'm not going to lie, Dustin, it's changed recently because I'm actually currently like 8 months pregnant. So my 4:30 starts aren't really happening anymore, but I'm okay with that. I'm like, we can sleep in. I deserve it. But otherwise, usually I do get up at 4:30 to go to the gym. But no, honestly, like this brand, and I think you guys could probably say the same about yours. It's like little 13-year-old me would be like, what the hell? You have a giant pink horse in your office and you get to work with all these people all around the world and do these have these crazy opportunities like speaking for Adobe and things like that. I just would have never, ever thought this was possible. Like even 6 years ago when I was working for someone else, if you'd asked me this and all the things that I've done, I would have been like, that could never happen. But because of social media, it's made it like a possibility, which is pretty insane.
Totally. I feel like you do so many different things. Do you have a favorite, from getting on the stage in front of hundreds, 500 people and speaking, from social to, again, the actual design work, and then leading your team, obviously, probably sales as well. I mean, what is your favorite?
Oh, it's tricky to answer that because I think it changes a lot. But I mean, Dan, you would probably know, and same with you, Dustin, as well. Like my role has obviously changed so much since starting the business. I wore all the hats, obviously the designer, marketing, communications, sales, etc. And then now as I've grown the business, and I don't have a massive team, there's 6 of us, But even then, now my role has changed entirely because I have 4 full-time designers that I'm giving all the work to. It's me, who is doing that marketing, that sales. But then, the role is entirely different. Not going to lie, sales calls aren't my favorite thing in the world. I just don't enjoy them that much. But in terms of, I miss designing. That's one thing I do miss, is because I don't get to do it as much. A lot of my time is spent into social media content to market the business. But the other speaking stuff was something that I never thought I would do. I was always that girl at school who would turn bright red when she went up and did her 3-minute speech when she was 13. And I was so nervous to do that kind of stuff. But now, I love it. I get up there, I get nervous for sure. It's intimidating, but it's just the rush of it is pretty insane. And having people's reaction and people come up to you at the end of your sort of session is so unreal. I was a dancer. I did hip hop dance for a lot of my life. And I think that's where the entertainment factor comes from. I love entertaining and being on stage, but I was never speaking on stage. That was a whole new ball game when Adobe asked me. They were like, "Do you want to speak?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can do this." Not that I'd had any experience in speaking before, but I was like, "Totally, I've got it." I just won it. See how it goes.
That's awesome. I watched from the Adobe Live, your recent one, where you highlighted us, and thank you for doing that. That was super cool. But you're a natural at it. That to me. So I've you talking about wearing all these different hats and things like that, right? And as a business owner, and you kind of leading a team, we and myself and even Dustin and stuff, I think as there's so many different opportunities now in the design industry, right? With, how hard are you going to lean into social media? How much time are you going to spend at conferences? Do you want to speak? If you do, how much time are you going to spend doing that? You still got the studio, employees, this whole thing. For us, as we've kind of went along and got a little deeper into it, we're starting to kind of pick and choose now a little bit. Where do we want to spend our time, right? Even going back a couple years, education. Did we want to get into education? We kind of put some time into it, tested it out, shot a course, and then kind of realized halfway through it, none of us really want to do this, and it's not for us. And we're out. It's not, if we're not enjoying doing it, and we can be over here doing design work for clients, and that's really what we enjoy doing, then that's what we should be doing, So I do think with people and young students and designers coming up, you don't have to do everything, and you have to be a certain person to really do all the little pieces and enjoy it, so.
I mean, me personally, I couldn't just get on camera and do what you and James and these people do just because it's so scary. In real life is different and easier, and I'm piggybacking with Dan, but so props, because that just seems so daunting, and you even have to edit it, so you have to probably see yourself while editing, and those components seem scary and challenging.
Oh, totally. And it's one of those things that I've really started to learn about. Obviously, this whole personal branding. To be honest, it's all about personal branding, and that really does so nicely align with a design business, especially if you are I am the face of it, to be honest. And so having that personal brand and growing it and getting these opportunities like these speaking gigs, again, yeah, like you said, Dan, you don't have to do it as a designer. It's not completely necessary. Don't feel like you're doing something wrong if you're not getting those opportunities, because you can do so many things right and go in a completely different direction. That's the beauty of social media, I think, is that it provides you with so many different paths of opportunity depending on who you are. If you're someone who's a super introverted person, yeah, you don't have to go out and speak. But I have to say, since doing the speaking sort of opportunities, this is my 3rd year in a row, I guess, professionally being a public speaker. And it has brought me so much confidence and even just internal growth about doing something that is so challenging. I'm not the best. I'm not good with words. I'm a terrible speller. I'm pretty bad at even just saying difficult words. My team knows that for sure. So that doesn't come naturally to me. So the idea of getting on stage and putting my creativity into something that's quite different and unique was such a challenge. But God, I've just learned so much from it, and I've grown a lot. And it's the ability to go on stage and then have those connections with people, which is honestly where a lot of the happiness comes from. I don't know if you guys find after conferences, I feel so refreshed. And I'm like, damn, like that's what I'm missing half the time, is because you're just so in the business.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's so true. That's what we've always said is like, go to these creative conferences, just meet people in the industry. Like, we have a very unique industry where you do get a bunch of competitors and people together, and everybody is really open to, exchanging ideas and processes and things like that. So it's super valuable. Mm-hmm. And just meeting those people and like some of the connections and friends we've made over the years are priceless. I mean, we wouldn't be on this Chop Up if we didn't meet you, at Creative South, like in person.
Totally. No, it's pretty amazing. Actually, just thinking about like the speaking side of things. Now I'm flipping it on its head again, but what the speaking has taught me to do, and I think if anyone else was to go into that space and they were a newbie into speaking as a designer, what it's actually taught me is that it's allowed me to separate, well, I'm still working on it, but I'm getting better at it, separate someone else's perception of you. For example, like your work, when we present something and a client comes back and doesn't like it, I used to get really hurt by it. Like I was like, oh, like I'm so gutted that they don't like this. Like feels like a personal attack. But with speaking, it's actually allowed me to separate it, because when you're speaking in front of, say, 800 people like you do at Adobe Max, there is no way everyone is going to take something out of that. It's basically impossible. Everyone has different likes, different dislikes. It's just unrealistic to think that everyone is going to love what you do. So that's like the biggest learning I think I've taken away from public speaking and diving into something that I never thought I'd do, for sure. And it's actually allowed me to design better in a way.
Yeah, it's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah, so some of the questions it's like one of our reoccurring questions we always like to ask, which I think I'm going to guess what you're going to say, but if you had to dive into vector or raster and why, what would be the two things, or what would be the one you pick out of the two things?
Definitely vector.
Okay.
Does anyone say rest?
The old people do. Like the old heads like me say raster,
Yeah, I mean, I just love the ability to move anything at all in terms of like those anchor points and just being able to manipulate something down to like the finest detail. That's basically the reason why. And then you can blow it up and put it on a building if you want.
Yeah.
And then so thinking about like what you were saying, we hung out briefly in, what was that, Georgia? I forget what state we were in.
Yeah, Georgia.
We were in Georgia, and I remember you mentioned something about you wanting to redo your logo, and you had a little bit of pushback of people telling you to not redo your logo. And I remember listening and thinking myself, like, man, I think you should do the opposite of I think you should redo it, So it's been maybe a year or a year since then. So it's like, have you even done a new logo and not shown anybody? Have you kept it under wraps, or are you just not even touching it?
This is a good subject too for designers specifically. We go through this like I don't know, always turning wheel of, I need to refresh my own brand because I'm over it and I'm bored. And yeah, so the story behind that was that I decided one day, I was like, I'm so sick of my logo. I just want new type and, just make it something a bit different. And I did it. And then I changed my profile image on Instagram. And I had like multiple people be like, what are you doing? Where did the old logo go? No, what, like, you don't change it. And just because I was sick of it, I was like, that isn't a reason to change a logo, really. And so I just went back to it. And then ever since then, I have not dived into, I guess, like creating an evolution for my logo. But what I have done is introduce Pedro, who's the famous horse.
Mascot.
We've got the giant version of him. Introduce him as like a prominent asset in the brand, and then now you see him quite a lot. I never wanted to actually have a horse element in my brand. I remember when I called my business Piny Pony, I was like, it's gonna feel tacky, it's gonna be like Pony Pals, like too girly. But then I found this giant life-size plastic horse you can literally sit on, and I painted him pink. I was like, he's quite badass. Like he looks really professional. I'm looking over at him right now. He's like really shiny. It's a cool structure. And then we got him 3D modeled for our website. And I was like, shit, we can use all these PNGs throughout our collateral. And it looks awesome. I'm so happy with where it's gone and how it's taken its own kind of path. But I never thought I was so against using the pony visuals with a name like Piny Pony. I was like, it's going to be too much. But here we are.
No, it's cool. Like if you haven't, people watching, if you haven't been to Kristy's website, go there, check it out. Because the Pink Pony, the rendered version of it on the website's amazing. Like the way you scroll and it's giant on there. I'm like, this is sick. Like it's rad.
Yeah, it was cool. It was a really fun project. Again, you're like using your creativity another way. I had to have so much help for that. Like I thought of the idea, and then I had a 3D modeler just email me out of the blue, and he was like, "Hey, if you ever need 3D model work, I'm here for you." Got it done, and our web guy Dan as well. Funny enough, he managed to create something really awesome. Yeah, it's sick. I'm so stoked with it.
That's cool. I would say that's like it's almost similar to kind of what we've done at Lincoln with, like, similar to kind of you and your name and stuff. Like we get asked all the time, like, where'd the name come from, this and that. And I've told the story a million times. Like I wanted to name, I have 3 boys, want to name them, one of them Lincoln, because this kid in my neighborhood had that name. I thought it was cool. Really had zero to do with the president. I just thought it sounded like a cool name. So anyways, my wife wouldn't let me do it. So then when I changed the name of the company 10 years ago, I changed it to Lincoln. And we were kind of hesitant in the beginning to like really lean into like anything with the president. Like we'd do a little bit here and there. And it's still like that today, where like, I don't know, I'd say like 20%, 25% of stuff we'll have like a nod to the president or whatever, but not for really any specific reason, right? But one of our best kind of graphics and logos is like this Lincoln head with 6 eyes on it, and the 6 eyes represented the 6 employees at that time. So yeah, it was something that kind of evolved out of nothing in a way, to be something that represents us, kind of similar to the horse like you're talking about. So
I mean, as you're talking about that, it makes me think about most great logos and iconography kind of bubbles up from the top. A lot of our clients are like, we want the Supreme logo, the Nike swoosh, and fill in the blank. And it's like most of those things you just don't get first try. You've started the business, you've ran the business for years, and it just kind of bubbles up to the top, and it tells you that it is going to become the icon or the logo or whatever that is. So it's just funny to think about Dan saying that, and it's just like a natural progression. And a lot of these businesses don't want to go through that natural progression. They're just like, can I just get the Nike swoosh now? And it's like, well, it'll take some time to get there. You'll find it. And yeah.
It's funny, like even thinking about you guys with the like Lincoln president, kind of ideas. I remember when I put the business name out there, obviously you do your research. You're like, is there a Pink Pony something out there? And I saw on Google there was actually a Pink Pony strip club in Atlanta. And I was like, I was like, should I do it? I was like, I really don't care that I have the same name as a strip club. And then funny story, I think it can be, like I've had multiple people tell me, oh, don't you know that that's a strip club in Atlanta? I'm like, hey, in the end, sex sells, that's what they used to say. But I had a funny kind of incident where someone messaged me on Instagram, and it was a guy, and he was like, hey, hun, I had the best night with you last night. And I said to him, I was like, I think you got the wrong Pink Pony. Sorry, brother. And then I said to him, where were you last night? And he said, Pink Pony strip club. And I was like, there you go. But even like, it's all these little associations. Like I actually think in a funny way, they can, even though it's a little bit negative, not really negative, but I don't know, it builds your whole vibe. Even with the song Pink Pony Club by Chapel Roan, that has done wonders for our brand. I get sent that all the time.
So one of our designers mentioned that today, like, hey, ask her about that song. And I'm old and don't know about that song. And they're like, ask her what it's done to her SEO. So it's funny to hear you say it's done well for you, because he was thinking maybe it hurts your SEO and those kind of things. So yeah, Dan's probably,
I don't know.
I didn't know either, but
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun song, and I honestly get sent it probably once a day, and people say, have you heard this? And I'm like, nah, definitely not. I don't know what you're talking about.
That's great.
That's funny.
So we've never been to anywhere in that portion of the world, really. So to us, New Zealand is relatively small. We don't exactly know. So we were even wondering, like, how much of your business is locally based versus international? Like, for reference, us, not a lot of our clients are here in town. We're a little more domestic instead of just locally. So just curious, like for you, where's most of your clients? Are they in town, in country, or international?
I would definitely say most of them are in the US, like probably 60% in the US. Like here in New Zealand, to be honest, if I only relied on New Zealand work because of like, if I wasn't on social media, I was just doing it locally, I wouldn't have a team. Like here in New Zealand, we're somewhat getting out of it. We kind of went through a recession and no one wanted to, pay for things like design. Like everyone was struggling with money and people still are, to be honest. So having the opportunity and option to be able to work with Americans has not slowed my business down at all. I know quite a few different business owners in various industries having to shut their businesses down because of this recession. But working with Americans is honestly, I love it. Also, it's a bonus that the conversion rate when you convert US dollar to New Zealand is quite great. So like I charge very differently as well in New Zealand versus in America. But it's benefited us a lot. And I think like in America, people tend, from what I know, understand the value of branding more and they're willing just to invest because they get it. But here in New Zealand, people are a little bit more, I don't know, like it feels like a lot of money for something that I just don't know if it has value.
Yeah,
really.
That's a good point. Dan and I used to be in San Diego where we kind of say the same thing, where we don't feel that the city valued the design as much. But up here in Portland, the Portland area, all the small mom and pop shops are willing to buy branding and buy creative assets no matter the price for the most part because they saw the value in it and they understood, versus down there it's like, my nephew or Shutterstock or whatever the case may be, they just weren't interested. So yeah, we totally see that too over here. Just in different cities, it's like night and day.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and even like the opportunity. Like we recently did a podcast, like some podcast visual identity for some Netflix stars that were on Love Is Blind. Like in New Zealand, you just don't get that. Like you just don't get those kind of opportunities. Like there is, but they're very small and hard to come by. But in America, there's so much more opportunity there. And also just the companies are bigger. Like people are dealing with the vast size of things is all bigger.
Totally.
So you're in New Zealand, so it's whatever, almost 3:30 here. It's what, like 2:30 your time, right?
It's 12:30 in the middle of the day.
12:30 middle of the day.
And I've actually got my team literally working around me because I could flip the camera and they're all just here.
Oh, okay.
I was like, I'm going on a podcast.
Hell yeah.
You can talk, but not loudly.
Nice. Because I was going to say we have some clients like say London and James is like 8 hours, 9 hours. So we have clients that from the US working with companies in the UK because they're working when we're sleeping type of deal, so they can meet with them at the end of the day. They're starting their day. The team in the UK can start working. By the time you come in the next morning, the work is done and it's in your inbox, right? But you're kind of the opposite of that. Like it's basically almost the same time. You're just a day ahead,
Yeah, definitely. But again, it can work out for us, like especially if we're, I don't know, running like a day behind on some kind of schedule, or we managed to get it in. Like for our Friday, it's US is Thursday, so it's quite nice that we can send everything through, before their week ends. But I mean, like there has been instances where it hasn't played out as well. But yeah, I just love working with people in the US. I think because of the size of everything, they're more open to, they just understand the value of visual identity design, which is awesome. I mean, it's our job to try and provide that value and show them what it can do for their business. But if they already have some knowledge in it, it's fantastic, really. It's great.
That's cool. All right, I don't want to gloss over the fact that you said you're 8 months pregnant, right? So
I sure am. I am.
That's awesome.
You're correct, which is pretty wild. I'm like, I'm supposed to be having a baby next month.
Yeah, congrats. That's huge.
You should be at home right now,
Yeah.
chilling.
Well, not going to lie, Dustin, I've had the most blessed pregnancy ever. I've touch wood, but I've been so lucky, like no sickness. I've just been doing everything as usual. I think people thought I'd be slowing down by now, but I'm like, I still feel great. Let's just carry on. I can say and set up all I can, but like I am the face of the business. So it's the idea of pulling away a little bit for a couple of months is kind of scary, but I just try not to think about it too much. And I just, you make it work. Like I know I'll make it work. I'm lucky with my team. If I was pregnant a year ago, this would have looked very different. I would have been very stressed. And even like down to the fact, like the leads are coming in really hot and heavy at the moment, touch wood. So like all those little things make it so much easier to step away, just because a lot of our social media is going really well. I'm sharing more on LinkedIn and that's going well, and all that kind of stuff helps like the momentum continue. Because that's the scariest thing, I think, being like the face of the business, of pulling away for a couple of months. It's the leads. I'm like, shit, will we still get enough inquiries? But again, we'll work it out. I'm probably too chill.
I mean, I
But
think
hey.
No.
just like with you finding the name and Pedro and the, everything, it's just like continue just to be your authentic self and tell everybody and be open. And it's like, hey, if these people have kids too, they completely understand. It's like, hey, I'm pregnant. I'm going to be, 2 months or however many months in the grand scheme of things is not that long, so it's like, and I know you got a great team there. So just that, you guys are going to do great.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's like I've had a couple of potential leads kind of ask, does this mean Kristy's not going to be doing the work? And I have to remind them, actually, like for the past year and a half, I haven't done a lot of the work that you see on our Pink Pony Agency Instagram. That's my team running that, because I just don't have the time, because I'm doing all these other things and just working on the business and growing it and getting those leads. But the people doing the design work is actually the team. So I just remind them, like, I've got a very incredible, talented team. You'll be in safe hands.
I mean, you're knowing how hard you work, I already know you're probably gonna be popping in with the baby, and you're gonna be there, and
owning an agency, and everybody's kind of like, oh, I want an agency and I'm gonna do freelance, and then from there, like, the goal is to start a studio and run an agency. And I've always just said that it has to be like, it will be your life, like your family, everything will kind of evolve around it, and then it will have to be part of it for you to kind of make it work, I would say. Like you can't really, I don't know a lot of agency owners that can completely treat it like this is a job and I go, 9 to 5 and then I check out on the weekend. I don't think about it and I go back, like, type of deal. So, I think, watching you're in it, you love it, you've created something amazing. So, like, to Dustin's point, if you're out for 3, 4, 5 months, like, your team's going to pick up the ball. Those leads are going to keep coming in, It might honestly weed out leads that you don't really want, and the ones you really do will stick around and stay there and come back if they need to. But yeah, you're going to be good.
I mean, like, coming back to what you said, Dan, about owning an agency, and people say, I want to own an agency, I want to do this. And it's interesting how many people say that, but they're not willing to put on those extra hours and like work really hard. And I mean, down to the fact that I used to get up at 4:30 and I come in every day at 7:00. It's not easy, and it's damn hard, but it is so worth it. Like, I wouldn't change it for the world, that's for sure. And like, it's probably going to shift a lot having a baby, but I'm kind of excited to see how it's going to change and have a new, like, whole chapter of Pink Pony and how this all works.
Yeah, it's great. So it's cool, and it's great to hear that, you have 6 employees. You've, in some capacity, you're working on the business. You've made it a point and set things up to remove yourself, a bit so you can focus on the marketing. I think, like, when I look back, I've owned a studio now for 20 years. When I look back, the first 10 years, the pressure and what an agency owner was expected to do wasn't there, because there was no social media, right? So there was no creative conferences, there was no speaking, there was no social media you were supposed to be on to promote your company. It wasn't an option. It wasn't there, right? So the agency owner with 6, 10 people could be at the studio doing quite a bit of the work as well, because you weren't getting pulled in these different directions, and the marketing of the studio didn't really rely on social media and getting out there and things like that, right? So
there was just no social media.
There was just none. Yeah. No. So that wasn't an option, right? Yeah. So you were just, and honestly, I look back and it's like, it's all about relationships, right? With clients and friends and past coworkers and things like that. Do great work. Those people will come back to you. They will move elsewhere and hire you wherever they go. And it came from that. It came from referrals and things like that, because there was no way to market a studio, back 10 years ago. So it's interesting, because you have a lot of pressure on yourself as far as like you said, you are the face of the studio. 10 years ago, nobody really cared who the face of the studio was. I mean, 10 years ago, nobody cared who the face of a brand was. You know, nowadays you can't have a brand without telling the whole backstory, exactly who the owner is, what the brand stands for, what you do every freaking day. Like, people want to know the backstory and the ins and outs of everybody's business, right? So I think it's harder now to almost, I would say, grow a studio in a way. Like, I think it's a little bit of both, because there's so much time you do have to put into all these other things. At the same time, that does reach a lot of people, which then brings you work, you know? So it's like this revolving circle, and this kind of like, I don't know, it's something you have to do that we didn't, you know, years ago.
We're just dating ourselves over here.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, but
Hey, that's so fun.
Yeah,
That's so
for
fun.
sure.
It is like an interesting thing. I had someone reach out to me recently who is starting her own business and getting into like growing her own business. And she works full time for another company. And she reached out and said, like, I want to grow my network. How did you do it? And my first two comments were basically, you know, tell people within your network, your immediate network, friends and family, that you have this service. You know, if you don't tell them, they're not going to know. And it's all about that personal connection. And then the second, get your ass on social media, like just start posting, start sharing your work. And she replied and said, oh, you know, I've found it really hard coming home after my job and trying to create content and like have the motivation to do so. And I'm like, I get it. And I don't mean to sound harsh, but that's the difference of someone who is going to succeed and someone who isn't. Is there's that person who, even though when it is hard, they have no motivation, they still just go out there and just like, I just have to do this because it's going to grow my business or my agency. It's going to get me new clients. I'm going to share my work. And social media is the perfect like example of the hard, like you could work really hard and get these amazing opportunities and clients and etc. But, you know, you have to put the work in. It's not just going to happen overnight.
And the work has to, you know, you can jump ahead of yourself too much. Like, and that's what I hear just from a lot of younger designers, like, you know, how do I get the big clients and this and that? It's like, don't worry about it. Create good work and create it now and spend the next 5 years doing it. And then that's going to come. Yes. Like, don't go looking for it now. Like, spend 5 years. You have a year experience. You have 6 months. You just got out of school. It's not going to come, and it shouldn't. You don't have the experience. Put your head down, create amazing work. And if you want to get online and social media, you know, here and there, yes, definitely share it. But spend most of your time creating amazing work. And people will notice, you know.
Yeah. And I love hearing it, you know, with social media now, you see these, you know, big guys pop up and like incredible designers. I don't know if you guys follow CJ Corley. He's a good example. He's awesome, you know, and I love, he's recently talked about his like journey of how he got to where he is today, and like, you know, how he had so much other experience prior to all the social media stuff. But I love hearing about that, because I'm like, this is the perfect example of it doesn't happen overnight. And even for me, like, I was working for 7 years after university in the industry, trying to find my way and figure out what I wanted to do. And I felt pretty lost the whole time. And I was like, oh, is this it? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And it took me 7 years to start Pink Pony. But everyone on social media, especially the young designers, just see Pink Pony probably, and they're like, oh, I can do this straight out of university. But actually, I've learned so much prior to that to be able to develop the business into what it is today, and all those connections as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dan drives that home. It's like, you need to get into the studio. You need to learn how to take a critique. I mean, there's something when you give somebody a bad feedback, you can tell if they're seasoned or not. Because as designers, we're used to just getting, you know, nobody likes nothing ever. So we're just really used to getting that feedback, and you can tell if they've never gotten that feedback before. You need to learn about file management. You need to learn about the difference of, you know, file formatting, colors, and all these things. So it's like so important to get into a studio. There's those rare cases of you know, whoever it may be, some legends, Hydro 74, that are able to potentially go straight into the field and start working. But I think it's just few and far between. You know, you just need to get that industry experience to get your feet wet, to be ready to take on those big jobs.
Yeah, exactly. And the one thing that I think you miss out on sure, like you can, I'm not saying you can't have a really good career or build an awesome business, personal brand, whatever it is, straight out of university. But, you know, having, for example, this is a good example. I went and worked my first job ever. I worked there for 4 years out of university, and there was an awesome team there, and I made lots of connections. And then with Piny Pony, probably about 2.5 years ago, I had the marketing manager at a big shopping center reach out to me. And it was the marketing manager that I worked with in that very first job. And she'd now gone through her own role and career and found herself working for the shopping center. And she said, "Hey, Kristy, I know you've been doing awesome stuff. I want to work with you. I want you to be the design team for this shopping center I'm now working at." And now, like, they're an awesome client. They're just ongoing. Like, it's a massive shopping mall in New Zealand. And I would not have had that opportunity if I had not made those connections. Like, all of those people you come across, like, no matter who it is in an interview, in a job, whatever it may be, has an effect on your life. You just don't really know it at the time. You're just like, it's just a friend or just an employee, just someone I work with.
100%. I mean, Dan started his career out of college at DC Shoes. And not only did he meet, so many contacts there that are now clients now, even for me coming into, being an employee years and years ago, it's like, I was like, oh, wow, I was influenced by those ads you created when I was a kid. So it's like, it's beyond just, clients and work. It's just great networking, really, at the end of the day.
We love a bit of networking here in New Zealand because it is small, I have to say. So what I say is every opportunity, like, put your best foot forward, even with people you don't like, because you never know where that might lead. We did a vision board exercise as a team. I would love to go and do a TEDx talk. I don't know if I'm reaching too high here, but I'm like, you know what? A few years ago, I never would have thought Adobe Max was an opportunity I'd get. So I'm like, let's do it. Let's aim for that TED talk. I'm going to put it out there to the world.
That's cool. So with this vision board, what does 5 years from now look like for Piny Pony? What are your goals?
This is it here, guys. This is a little show and tell.
Oh, you got it? Nice. Heck yeah.
I've got it right here. It's very Piny Pony.
Nice.
Oh, wait, that's raster, though.
Right?
Actually, you know what? I did this in Photoshop, so yes, it is raster.
Oh,
God
shit.
damn.
I'm just teasing.
Going against everything I said. But there's the TED talk there. This was just for this year, and I don't know if I'm trying to reach for too many goals, but I've got the TED talk. I've got write a book. I've got a healthy baby Campbell. I've got wine and cheese. I've got running again. There's a lot in there for 1 year for a gal who's about to have a baby. But you know what? Screw it. We're going to try and achieve it all.
That's awesome.
I love it.
Heck yeah.
Big dreams. Big dreams. Mm-hmm.
Well,
try our best.
Make it happen.
And then maybe come over to you guys to see you in the flesh in your studio.
You open door anytime you want. We got the Lincoln House here. You can stay up the road. So you just say the word and date, and we'll host you.
Oh, sounds great. I'll bring the baby Campbell.
we can get a couple baby tees made up by then. No problem.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Are you guys actually? I know this is not a podcast. I'm not interviewing you, but are you going to have another event at all? I'm curious.
Not this year. So this year is 10 years of Lincoln. So moved the studio up from San Diego in 2015. So 2025 is 10 years. So this year we're going to focus on, we're actually in the middle of kind of wrapping up a 10-year of Lincoln book. So it'll be like 288 pages, 10 chapters, and basically focus, no work, no client work at all, just what we've done over the last 10 years to promote Lincoln. So it'll highlight the retreats, our logos, just different things we've done, you know, with the studio, at the studio over the last 10 years. So that needs to get wrapped up. We'll get that printed hopefully in hand in like April. We have a couple conferences we're going to go to this year with Crop and Creative Works. Probably go out to Max this year. So no conference this year. If it happens again, like we're up in the air. That I've talked about it a little bit here and there, and it was like the coolest experience and the biggest challenge. And like you talk about kind of speaking and stepping outside of your comfort zone. The whole studio had to do that for that event, you know. Everybody stepped up. It ended up being an amazing event. You know, everybody that attended had a great time. It was just a huge lift for the studio to do that as well as client work. So the next one will be on a little smaller scale, a little more intimate, different location, even though that location was amazing. They just sucked to deal with, so we would go elsewhere. But There probably will be one at some point, not this year though.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. You guys are a big inspiration for me.
Thank you, Kristy. Appreciate you, and I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day, and you're ready to go on maternity leave, and I'm glad we could work this in, and it's cool to hear that you're healthy and studio's going to run while you're out. I wouldn't worry about that. Your team's going to step up and take care of that, so I think it's awesome.
No, thank you guys so much for having me on. Honestly, it's such a pleasure. Cheers.
Thank you,
Maybe I hit a
Kristy.
beer.
Yes, cheers.